Hello there, and welcome to our discussion today about how edge computing could be your key to new markets. A live and hopefully interactive webcast is sponsored by CenturyLink. My name is Dave Shacochis. I'll be introducing our industry experts here in just a minute. But before we get started, just wanted to cover some housekeeping items. Today's presentation is hopefully interactive, so please feel free to submit questions using the Ask a Question button. We'll do our best to answer them during the Q&A portion of our webcast. If we don't get to your question live, or if you happen to be watching this on demand in the future, you can still use that button to ask your question, and we'll respond via email as a follow-up. If you're submitting on demand, please do make sure to include your email address with your submission, and we'll get that followed back up with you. If you'd like to learn more about CenturyLink at any time, check out the Related Resources widget at the bottom of your console. And one final bit of housekeeping, to keep the overall engagement levels up, if you stick around throughout the entire webcast, towards the very end, we're going to be giving away a fantastic little tchotchke, a smart mug. You may not understand there are such things as smart mugs. I wasn't aware of that until I signed on to the rehearsal the other day. But we have a smart mug from our partners at Ember. You can basically do anything you can do with a mug except smarter with this great tchotchke. So stay tuned for a chance to win one of those. And then throughout the session, we'll be actually engaging with you in the audience, talking a little bit about how some of the technical topics align to your particular area of business. We're going to be asking you a little bit about your own company's journey on digital initiatives and what some of those business initiatives are looking like in relation. So we will also be giving away anybody who engages with us on the poll. We'll be following up, and you can add to your probably burgeoning tile collection one of those cool little tile tchotchkes, keychains, stickers, things that you can put on your valuable devices to keep track of things. To add to your IoT profile, as it were. So what we thought we would do here before we kick things off, and as we get into the introductions, what we wanted to start off with is just a little bit of a framework. And this will be a framework that kind of guides most of our discussion, because we're going to be talking about applications and how distributing applications, innovating at the edge, opens up these possibilities for a lot of new business initiatives. We see a lot of different asset-intensive industries and interaction-intensive industries really starting to experiment with. And so there's definitely this emerging consensus that there's a paradigm, a spectrum, that ranges from centralized cloud resources and centralized data center resources to support business applications in that potentially variable double-digit to triple-digit round-trip latency band that can be starting to be supplemented by both regionalized, either into a metro area or an even more localized area within the network or within content distribution systems, as well as premise-based computing, smarter devices, smarter gateways, smarter localized elements of computing. So left to right here across the diagram that we're sharing, we're going to be thinking about how different workloads and the different resources that support business applications can be applied in those latency bands. And then we're going to be thinking about sort of the building blocks of distributed applications, both at the physical layer as well as the network layer that's going to require all of these distributed applications to work. We'll be looking at the infrastructure and the software distribution layers and all the different resources that make that possible, and how different companies are thinking about those resources in different ways. And then we'll be sort of framing it all up under the overall umbrella of application development and management. So we've got a lot of great industry experts that are going to help us out here today. Again, I'm your host, Dave Shacochis. We have Mark Thiele, who's going to lead off with us around a discussion of and he has a range of experience across this entire stack. Mark is doing some work today in and around the physical layer, but is also has a lot of expertise he's going to share with us in about a 15 to 20-minute keynote presentation around application development, innovation, management, and strategy. And then we're going to have a panel discussion where Mark will be joined by a gentleman named Dave Cooper. Dave comes to us from CenturyLink and is one of the lead architects of the global network that runs inside of CenturyLink's business, and Dave will talk to us a little bit about that, as well as how that network is starting to become part of a broad infrastructure portfolio that spans those different latency bands. And then Glenn Goldstein will join us. Glenn works and is a news curator for OTT News. Glenn is also somebody who consults with a number of different organizations, including CenturyLink, on product strategy. Glenn is going to talk to us a little bit about some of the different ways that applications and content and software delivery get distributed throughout these latency bands, and how that all can start to tie together as part of organizations' digital journeys. So before we dive in and turn it over to Mark to start talking to us a little bit about the overarching strategy, we thought it would be good to start off with a grounding audience poll. And so we've put a little audience poll up there on the screen. Would love your feedback as we work our way through it. But we're basically sort of trying to understand, what is your level of innovation velocity? How fast is your company driving digital initiatives out to market? And where are you getting the sources of data that feed those digital initiatives, those feedback loops, the data that helps enrich where you should be prioritizing innovations or adapting your customer experience? Would you characterize your organization as an expert, multiple innovations deployed each month with access to all the data you need? Would you characterize yourself as advanced, right, with monthly deployments informed by many of the sources of enterprise data? Would you characterize yourself as really a moderate kind of digital velocity type of organization with maybe a few deployments a year? Or do you really not think of your organization as a digital enterprise at all? Would you characterize your ability to go and drive digital innovations using distributed applications as something that you would characterize as fairly limited? So as we click on down into the poll, and these live results are coming in, and again, thank you for everybody, whether you're motivated by the tile or not. Thank you for chiming in. We certainly see that the majority, about 50%, would characterize themselves as moderate. And this is a question we ask of our customers. This is a question we ask in sort of venues like this. I know I've certainly hosted podcasts where we ask this exact question, and this is actually pretty comparable to a lot of the other enterprise environments. In fact, maybe it's a tick higher. The median answer we tend to see on this scale is maybe in that moderate to limited range, which signifies to us that a lot of companies are still on their journey towards digital transformation, towards really taking advantage of the digital velocity opportunities that, for many enterprises that weren't born in the cloud to be able to get there. So I think that's a really good grounding baseline that leads into some of the prepared marks that Mark was going to cover for us around what opportunities there are for differentiation, both in that centralized region as well as closer to the edge, and some enterprise perspectives that Mark brings. So Mark, I'll let you take it from there.
Dave, thank you very much. And thank you for having me on, and welcome everyone. This is a relatively short presentation, and it really boils down to a combination of my experience on the buy side and on the sell side of IT. And I've had the luxury throughout my career of both building large-scale application and infrastructure environments, including entire data centers, and deploying and managing them, as well as being on the sell side of that equation, where I'm helping with customers that are acquiring those capabilities or solutions. And so that luxury, beyond being on the sell and buy side, has also meant that I've had a leg in both the cloud side and on the infrastructure side for a big portion of my career. I was playing with virtualization as early as 2001, 2002, and already working on cloud opportunities immediately following the announcement of S3 at Amazon, and have been involved in both cloud and data center ever since. And over the last 5 years, I've spent a significant amount of time looking at what the opportunity for Edge might represent. And so my presentation here is really kind of a combination of those things, and having created a kind of a thought basis for me relative to why the things that we're talking about today, why the topics that Dave covered at the beginning, I believe are so important for everyone to consider. So, why transformation? I won't read this whole slide for you folks. Please, feel free to read it. But I mean, it really boils down to the fact that digital transformation is accepted at several different layers as an opportunity. But the two most important opportunity areas are that people that implement successfully reap rewards in terms of faster revenue growth and stronger net profits. That comes from IDC. I don't have a date on there, but that's also from 2019. And while there's an acknowledgement of human factors in digital transformation, I would be one of the first ones to talk about human factors in digital transformation, and ability for more optimization and efficiency, et cetera, et cetera. But to me, the driving opportunity associated with transformation is what can we do to better serve our customers, better engage, get better feedback, give them better experiences, et cetera, et cetera. In the end, that's really should be the focus of almost everything that we do. So transforming a company, I said transforming into a technology company. Why that? Well, if you think about, let's pick a couple of examples, right? Let's pick Netflix. Netflix is Blockbuster. And most of us that are older than 35 years old remember what Blockbuster was, and Netflix is Blockbuster. But Netflix doesn't have any stores. They don't sell any CDs that you have to return to the store anymore. Google, what is Google? Well, if you really think about it, Google's an advanced form of library. Really, you could argue a lot of other things, but the basis of their opportunity that they've represented to the public and created marketing platforms on top of, et cetera, is that they are a modern library. So if we can take a library and turn it into Google, then there are literally no limitations on what kind of business can become a technology business. So it's really critical, right? I can read these things that are important to you from a people standpoint, but from a vision standpoint, it's identifying the vision for where your company could be on its transformation journey that is continuous. And leading towards that. And technology is a huge enabler, but without the right culture, without the right, an appropriate organization and a vision for what you're going to become, all the technology in the world will not solve that problem for you. So, platform your enterprise's ability to respond effectively and quickly to employees and customers and partners or supplier requirements will be what differentiates your business and helps to ensure its survival. And I believe that with literally every fiber of my being. So COVID-19, again, I'm not going to read all of these bullets. You can pick and choose what you'd like to read. But the main point here is that COVID-19 has raised the attention of folks who recognize that they need to be able to get things done wherever people are, regardless of who owns the systems. And it's anything from being able to work from anywhere, which to me means that even if you work in the town where your business used to be, your business no longer has an office, so you're now working from anywhere. Working from home means that you're in effect 30 minutes away from an office. Generally speaking, that's what working from home means, or working remote. So the modern world of working from anywhere is very different and needs different solutions to help solve for it. Back to Dave's point about the importance of Edge, which I will continue to elaborate on. But the catalyst here of COVID-19 is people have realized that their processes of lengthy meetings and long change control processes and physical processes for deploying systems, et cetera, need updating. And COVID has accelerated that recognition. So if we thought we had 5 years to get to an Edge strategy or to deploy Edge in some form, if we thought we had 5 years to seriously be on our transformation journey already, I think we're wrong. And I think that has been shrunk by a significant period of time. So what is the macro driver for these trends, right? There's a bunch of trends on this list, and these all feed into the point about COVID, the point about Edge, the point about digital transformation. But any one or all of these trends are facilitating your transformation journey from a technology standpoint, are important to an enterprise because any or all of these capabilities increase your ability to engage with a customer, right? And again, that's really the point of what we're trying to accomplish here is how do we engage better with a customer? And when I'm talking about engagement, I'm not talking about the fact that we respond to emails faster. I'm not talking to the fact that we have better phone trees. I'm talking about, people really be feeling like they're a part of what's going on at your business as they use or experience your product and service. So I expect that, to my point earlier, that DX has accelerated this transformation by 12 to 18 months. Some people have argued that's as much as 2 years. Either way, it means that we need to get off our proverbial butts, as it were, and focus on what we can do to get our business to be more like a platform. Why do I say platform? Technology company, you could call it that. But I like the term platform for the simple reason that platform to me denotes a solution that allows for plug and play, allows for changing what you do fairly quickly and accommodating what comes rather than making a fixed decision what you want to come over the next 4 to 5 years. So natural opportunity, what do I mean by that? Well, digital transformation, if we all believe what Mark says is true, that digital transformation, business transformation, is an opportunity to get more engaged with customers. How do you do that, right? What's your mechanism? Well, you could do more emails, you could do more phone calls, you could make a fancier web page. But if you really want to differentiate and you want to engage your customers, Edge, to me, is the natural path for gaining that capability to embrace your customer in new ways, or at least in better ways than you've been able to in the past. So think about the enterprise in general, the traditional corporation as a body without arms, or at least very short T-Rex arms. Edge computing adds arms and hands, adds the ability to convey the things that a hug, an embrace, a handshake convey. That's trust, that's friendship, that's strength, among many other things. And so Edge is your opportunity to help do that from a customer perspective. So, as I've been highlighting, it really is about the customer and differentiating relative to the customer. I find it, if I can digress for just a second, I find it really frustrating and ironic that everyone knows the customer is most important, and yet we consistently have to repeat things like losing a customer costs 8 to 10 times more than it takes to keep a customer. We have to repeat that to people year over year over year. I think everyone knows, inherently they understand that differentiating even in a small way with a customer has an ability to help keep that customer happy and keep that customer coming back. And it doesn't have to be big ways. So now think about, and you can see the bullets I've got here: performance, more loyalty, interactive interactions, et cetera, but even something as simple as improving latency on an application that people think today is working. And I hear that a lot. I am telling you, I hear that a lot. Oh no, the application works just fine today. Why would I need to take it to the edge? Why would I need to take some portion of this application to the edge? Well, we had phones that worked fine in 2005. Why did we go to the iPhone? We had 3G. It worked great. Why did we go to 4G? Why are we going to 5G? A small change in how a customer views the performance and capability of your applications and websites can be the difference between them staying there and buying something and them going somewhere else. And you don't have to take my word for it. You can look at Amazon and eBay and Google and Oracle and SAP, all for studies on the benefit of app performance on a campus or with end users out on the street. So information technology isn't an immovable fixed answer, right? So I'm really coming up to the end of this presentation now and trying to wrap up some thoughts around what I'm trying to get across. And in order to get out to the edge, one of the things I'm asked on a regular basis when I'm out speaking or talking to folks about Edge and why I'm so fascinated with it, why I'm such a firm believer, I get asked all the time, well, it's premium property, Mark, it's going to be pricier. And the first thing that popped into my head the very first time I heard that is, well, why do you think that? And most people think that, I'm being very simplistic here, but most people think that it's going to be pricier and more costly because they're assuming that the only way they can get to the edge is by stretching the rubber band that surrounds their current solutions out over new environments. And that's not the way to think about this. You really need to challenge your assumptions. You need to challenge your assumptions about what you need to do alone. You need to challenge your assumptions about what you think partners can deliver for you. You need to challenge your assumptions for what a data center needs to be or has to be. You need to challenge your assumptions for what a server needs to look like and what tools you might need to support them and how much more improvement you can get. And just as an example, if you are managing your own servers, as opposed to letting somebody like CenturyLink take care of them for you, if you're not following 3 or 4 years from now, if you're not following capabilities like the SREs at Google that expect a 50% year-over-year improvement in how they manage their server environments, then you are falling behind. You are failing. So really, it's critical that you challenge your assumptions about what can be done, because the flying car is out there. You just need to know where to look and how to acquire it. Consider the value of being front and center with customers, right? I mean, I just highlighted that in several slides, but there is no going back. If you can get ahead of your customer or ahead of your competition relative to grabbing the attention of your customers, that's something that's really hard to break. Edge really offers that opportunity in so many different ways, from a deeper interaction to more, to improved apps, to just improved performance on existing apps, to getting a customer into the product development lifecycle for your company's products and services. I mean, you get just a few people in talking about how they were able to do that. And if many of you probably remember the news that Tesla got, the global reaction Tesla got, because Elon responded to a tweet about a potential improvement that they could make to their cars, and he implemented it and rolled it out 2 weeks later. That customer is literally in the product development lifecycle in real time for that company. That is a hugely powerful connection to that customer that is not likely to be broken by simple, we have a better car messages. Lastly, don't go it alone, right? No one can solve for the edge. No one can do it by themselves. Not a large enterprise, not a large technology company. This is an opportunity to rethink how you deliver solutions, how you manage solutions, and what you expect from your partners in how those solutions perform effectively for your customers and partners. So with that, I'd like to open up this poll and let Dave explain where we're going with that next. Dave, thank you very much.
Super. Yeah. Thanks, Mark. That's great. Really good perspective on, what digital innovation looks like and how the edge and edge computing venues and customer interactions with digital innovations in different concentric latency bands can be important. We'd love to understand what the viewers here, what the audience, how you're thinking about distributed computing, edge computing. How important is it to your digital transformation strategy, right? Are you basically to the point where you're pretty convinced that you can't run everything your business needs in the public cloud or an enterprise centralized data center? Or do you maybe think there's an opportunity, but you're still clarifying how that would come to pass, so you think it's important? Or do you sort of categorize it as somewhat important? You're not that convinced that edge computing or distributed applications are part of your plan, so somewhat skeptical, or is it completely unknown? Right? We haven't even really thought about edge computing or content distribution for our business. Everything that we need runs in a fairly centralized, either SaaS-based or centralized model. So as we maybe take a second here to take a look through, it looks like the majority of the audience here, and that's certainly a majority, feel it's important, but the strategy is still clarifying, and that's expected, right? So those middle two bands probably getting 90% of the vote. Certainly good to know that there's none of the respondents are completely think that the edge is a complete unknown. But then again, there's still some emerging consensus there in terms of where edge computing and how distributed applications can potentially help the business. So we thought this would be a really great way to jump into the panel discussion. Now that we've kind of grounded that, we have organizations that are still maturing in their overall digital innovation maturity, that are looking at and still really forming up around what your distributed application strategy might look like. I wanted to bring in some industry experts to talk a little bit about those other building blocks we talked about, sort of those 5 building blocks of physical network, infrastructure, virtualization and software distribution, as well as the application development practices and the management theory and strategy theory that Mark talked to us a little bit about. So we'll start our panel discussion, Dave Cooper, bringing you in to really drill in on and talk about that second block up, right, the network. Right, as companies are looking at building distributed innovations, that network that connects them all really becomes vital. And you've helped build one of the largest and most powerful networks in the world. We thought maybe it would be interesting as a quick primer before we start talking about some of the facets of that. Can you talk a little bit about what it takes to build a global scale fiber backbone and all the different moving parts that comprise that level of connectivity?
Yeah, thanks, Dave. I think we all know it takes a significant amount of fiber. Fiber that fuels the cloud, it fuels the enterprise, and it really does enable distribution at scale. And it's taken CenturyLink decades of construction. We've installed thousands of miles of conduit and fiber all over the land and sea, and over that fiber, we've built out these large optical and packet switching fabrics that have supported some pretty big internet and MPLS networks. And over that time, we've also spent times building software automation to enable those assets. And as the public cloud has grown in importance, being able to enable virtual connections across that cloud infrastructure, the physical infrastructure of fiber and internet and MPLS, that's where the marriage of software and network has shown its promise. I think as edge grows and fiber and networking scale matter, it matters much more at a local level. And you just can't connect to a handful of data centers in any given market anymore. You need fiber everywhere. You have to have switching fabrics at scale, and it all must be software controllable.
Got it. Yeah, so it's really the speed of light is the one normalizing factor in the middle of all of that. When we were prepping for the discussion panel earlier in sort of our pre-show session, one of the things we talked a lot about that entire fiber network can really be engaged with on two main models, right? A public model and a private model. Let's start talking about public IP, also known as the public internet. When it comes to public networking, what are some of the critical factors you think come into play when thinking about that customer experience Mark was talking about?
Yeah, I think in general, the internet itself has been fine for most applications. Many of the applications enterprises use today now in their home offices as well. And it's worked well over a best effort network. And, to an application developer developing those applications, the internet's been easy. So generally we've come to accept the performance limitations that we define as the internet. But as we know, internet's on a shortest path. It's on a best effort basis, and the peering interconnectivity that pulls together all these internet networks, while much more optimized for content delivery the last few years, it still lacks a lot of that capillarity capability that supports localized networking. So, as we talk about the edge and we talk about the benefits of the edge, there are some drawbacks with public internet networking.
What are some of those? Yeah, what are some of those traps that you see application designers maybe falling into when they only consider the best effort public IP as their method of app communication?
Well, I think application developers are going to do what they do best. They're going to optimize, right? And as we talked about, the internet is best effort, and they'll oftentimes use software to optimize around the constraints of compute, storage, and networking. You've seen amazing things happen with the user experience, even in lossy environments. And if you take, for example, the recent COVID and the push to work from home, take, for example, video conferencing, right? In my experience, compared to the past few years, it's been a much, much better experience. And, it's the same internet, but it's just better software. But ultimately, I think you'd like your developers to focus in on innovation and without all of the optimizations around the constraints of a best effort network. And if there are better modes of network available, such as private direct connections, then we should focus on making that capability as easy to use as the internet.
Got it. So I want to talk about the other side of that model, where you start digging into private networking, and then there's a good question coming in from Merv in the audience that we'll get to next around how wireless starts to play. But Dave, what are some of the, how are private IP networks evolving? What's the private IP of that equation look like?
That's the other side of the equation, obviously, and to be a little cliche, private IP networks are becoming the data center. Especially the automated private direct connections that are facilitating it. We see that quite a bit in uptake on the public cloud. Whether it's the enterprise data center or third-party data centers on the public cloud, these private IP networks are allowing enterprises to extend their server and storage footprints. So, we've seen the public internet's role in the adoption of public cloud, but in a best effort manner. But when you need bandwidth, performance, and security guarantees, private direct connections can optimize where the internet can't.
Got it. So what are some of the customer experiences you can support if you're going private? What are some of the customer outcomes and experiences by going that private direct connection that you can't really do with the public path? Did we freeze?
Did we lose him?
We just had a real-time demonstration of the lossiness of the internet. So I apologize.
I wanted you to answer the question, but I didn't want you to answer the question that way. Could we try? Refuse our words. Refuse our words.
Sorry, Dave. Sorry, team. So just really quick, private IP networking. It is becoming the data center. Whether it's the enterprise data center, third-party data centers, or the public cloud, these private IP networks are allowing enterprises to extend their storage and their server footprints, right? We've seen the internet's public cloud use and the adoption of the internet as a mechanism to go between the enterprise, the consumer, and the public cloud. But that's in a best effort manner, right? When you need bandwidth, when you need performance and security guarantees, private direct connections can optimize where the internet can't.
Right. Got it. So there was a question that came in from Merv in the audience talking a little bit about, in this network vein, asking, and Dave, maybe you can address this one, where does 5G and Wi-Fi 6, where do those work for SASE, S-A-S-E, commonly referred to as Secure Access Service Edge, and edge computing? How are some of the wireless choices that innovators and enterprises are making factor into this network design concept?
That's a great question. So I think there's a lot of innovation going on, and obviously we have the public 5G or LTE answer to that, and then there's the private LTE. I think edge compute, whether it's being fueled by fiber or whether it's 5G operators using it for their MECs, placing the applications that are fueling their wireless infrastructures. The ability to integrate those capabilities with some of the SASE type environments and capabilities is going to play a key role. I do think, though, that going back to the latency and performance matters aspect of it, making sure that you're localized and your networking is available in those locations, whether it's at the public wireless provider's MEC or it's at a edge compute location distributed throughout the world.
Yep. So sort of bringing policy, right, whatever you do, making sure that your policy ties off to all the different connection points. I'd love to, maybe this would be a great opportunity for us to maybe poll the audience now in terms of how you all are thinking about how digital experience ties to your innovations and how you see your network evolving. How do you think about your network needs over the next 5 years? Do you think that you're evolving towards a public-only type of model where you use the internet as a ubiquitous network and then use a number of different overlay technologies and tunnels and zero trust policies to link everything together? Or are you really thinking private first, right? To have a default posture will be that most IT and operational technology interactions get connected over dedicated channels? Or are you thinking more of a hybrid where it's public first, but private optimized, right? Kind of what Dave was talking about there in terms of using private to really target in on the type of network flows where you do need that additional level of control. Would love to see what the audience thinks about any one of these three choices. I think there's probably, there's clearly a polar opposites. They're not exactly polar opposites, but the first two are both sides of the equation, as we were talking about before. And then that third one is kind of a balance. It does seem like the vast majority, 80% of the audience there, is envisioning that hybrid model. We're using private networking to optimize. So that's not surprising. I think that's consistent with what we've seen other places and elsewhere. So we wanted to shift our conversation a little bit more now, instead of talking about driving policy into the network, talking a little bit about some of the ways that content and different type of application functions can get pulled out physically closer into the network. And I think that would be a good place to bring in Glenn from an over-the-top perspective. Glenn, along those lines, how are you seeing content delivery networks evolve? Right? What are some of the new business models you're seeing there?
Yeah, sure. So I'd been a CDN customer for nearly 20 years, so that gives me pretty good perspective on this. In the early days of us using CDN, I was actually with MTV, and we viewed CDN back then as just strictly protection against denial of service attacks. CDN was just a big shock absorber in front of us. That's all we really wanted. Very quickly, we came to realize that the real story, in addition there, was all about performance improvement of websites, and then apps, of course, and scaling for large audiences. And I think that's going to be continuing to be the primary mission of CDNs, is performance improvement through caching and scaling for large audiences. But with the advent of edge compute, it brings a whole new set of capabilities to CDNs. I think the CDNs, where we had maybe traditionally thought of them as bit pumps, just push the bits through as quickly as possible with caching. Now I think we're going to see the CDNs being able to manipulate the bits. So once you can do transformations or manipulations, that opens up the door for all sorts of new applications around real-time interactivity, personalization, certainly format optimizations, and that actually pairs nicely with the explosion of all these different devices that maybe support only specific image formats or large form factor versus small form factor. And of course, security, not only DDoS mitigation like I was dealing with in the old days with MTV, but protection against other threats around bot attacks and such. I think you also see new business models open up, both for platform operators who stand up edge compute platforms, but also a marketplace of providers of niche little modules that can just be picked off the shelf and run in an edge compute environment, much like what we see with a provider like Section.io. And I think all of this is a real natural extension for CDNs that may have optimized in the past, obviously for delivery throughput, but may find themselves with excess compute sitting out there on the edge, and this is a fine way to leverage that excess compute.
So that's interesting. So a lot sounds like there's a lot of innovation going on, in evolution going on inside of what are traditionally thought of as CDNs, bit pumps. I like that turn of phrase. What are some of the other, sort of hard to reach content and application delivery scenarios that you see some of these companies really leveraging those innovative technologies to be able to address and contend with?
Yeah, traditionally in OTT delivery, not hard to guess, but people in hard to reach areas are folks in rural areas or on congested ISPs. Restrictive firewalls like those in corporate networks can often be a problem. And of course, folks moving around on mobile devices. There's a few ways of dealing with this. I think as CDNs get better and better at localizing and getting you hooked up to an edge server as close as possible to you, that helps quite a bit. But I think extending the edge all the way out to the device itself or in layers in between, I think would be very helpful. This idea of mesh delivery, where the devices themselves can act as peers for each other and help serve content to each other. There's several technologies there. CenturyLink has an offering there with StreamRoute, for example. And I think you'll see an area, I like another good term I've heard recently is fog computing. So if you've got layers of sort of the cloud and then the client, cloud, edge, and client, fog can sit in there between the client and the edge. And examples there may be like home gateway devices that act as caching servers, or maybe it's a gateway device in an apartment building would be a good example. And that can be an extension of a CDN cache all the way down there as close to the client devices as possible.
Right. So and there's sort of, to that earlier point we were making, and you said that phrase, and, maybe we should define it, but OTT, or over the top, fundamentally just sort of means we're going to use the internet for transit. But we just polled the audience, found 80% of the audience thinking, well, public first, but when performance really matters, or when I have some kind of a sub design I need to be able to think about, I want to optimize with private. It sounds like some of those options, some of those innovations, whether it's a private fog computing layer tied into that private network, or something like an edge cache, or an edge mesh from peer to peer, is something that could really tie into that private network. Are we thinking about it the right way there?
Yeah, that's right. And the term OTT, over the top, means different things to different people. OTT, in one sort of way of looking at it, is just a business model, a model for SVOD or delivering video through subscriptions like Netflix and such. But really, I think of OTT more of using IP technologies to stream video as opposed to the old QAM and, cable modem, traditional cable TV or over-the-top mechanisms. And OTT, of course, still can be delivered through your cable modems. But when it is more and more, you're finding that it's being done by the operator, the cable operators, over strict IP, not over their old IP TV delivery mechanism.
Got it. Thank you for that good clarification. Yeah. So I think it would be good now to maybe ask the audience a little bit about how they're thinking about distributed applications from a software pipeline perspective, right? What is the way that you get your software out into the distributed application, to the distributed world, to the extent that you do them? And so there's a number of choices here. We said, when you think about distributing applications, is your first instinct, we're going to use the CDN. We're going to use a CDN and some of their emerging CDN features and functions to push our code out into the world? Or are you thinking more along the lines of Kubernetes clusters and private clouds, where you have apportionment of public and private cloud resources, where you're landing your software code in something that is containerized and extensible? Or are you thinking primarily at looking at the public cloud, whatever the public cloud has, and extending the public cloud onto your prem or into your facilities or out closer to the edge? Some of the things like AWS Outpost and some of the ways that you can really extend the public cloud out into the built environment. Or when you think about distributed software, are you thinking, look, we just need servers. We're pretty sophisticated in the way we already distribute software. We're thinking about just making sure we have server capacity in all the right places, and we'll build up our software pipeline from there. Or is it a hybrid of the previous four, right, that is use case dependent, envision a combination? Or is it none of the above, where because you answered unknown to poll question number 2, which I don't think we had very many people who did, so hopefully it won't be anybody, but hopefully nobody will answer none of the above. So in that long lead up, if we take a look then at the answers, it looks like we have the majority of folks, when they're thinking about distributing their software, they're thinking more about extending from the public cloud. That's interesting, right? So the idea of taking some of those premise-based and maybe carrier-embedded models or premise-based models that the public clouds are enabling, that actually seems to be one of the appealing options to the audience here. And then, of course, the hybrid answer. I realize it's a bit of a bailout, but it's honestly a hybrid world in terms of enterprise problem solving. So that's good. That's an interesting way to think about it. So as we maybe continue forward to just a little bit more of an open discussion point on the rest of our panel discussion in the time we have left, Mark, I'd maybe like to pull you back in. You talked a lot about innovation strategies and the desire to help change that relationship with customers, really change, build bonds of trust and things like that. What are some of the design use cases you really think about when enriching customer relationships?
Yeah, I mean, it of course would be to some degree unique in the actual implementation, depending on what kind of business that you're in and what kind of product or service that you're trying to represent to the enterprise or to your customer. And some customers or some enterprises are looking to reach literally every customer, like a Walmart as an example, or a McDonald's, or someone else who sells consumer products on a wide scale. And others, their customers might be the equivalent of other enterprises, business to business. But where the opportunity, I think, really breaks down into 3 general obvious areas, and there are many more, but I picked 3 because I knew we didn't have all day, is the ability to be live with a customer as they experience an activity or a product, right? So depending on your service, obviously if somebody is licking an envelope, chances are they don't need to be online to experience licking the envelope better with the company that built the envelope. But on the other hand, if you've delivered an application that helps a person experience an environment, or they're maybe installing a complex set of tools, or hell, for that matter, building an IKEA table, right? All of us have, well, maybe not all of us, but many of us have had that struggle of, wow, these plans look a lot easier than the actual activity of putting this together. The ability to actually be engaged with the customer as they go through that activity, either through some VR mechanism or something similar as they go about building the product that they've bought or using the product that they've bought or the service that they're in the middle of, is a huge opportunity, right? So I picked that as my number one as a potential opportunity, especially relative to Edge, because real time is so important in that regard. Most of us want to know that we have a voice as well. And so using instant customer response to integrate customer suggestions and use cases into the product roadmap, as I mentioned in my presentation, is a clear opportunity. And it builds bonds, as I mentioned, with the customer that are lasting. When a customer believes that they're listened to and heard, and even better yet, that what they've suggested eventually makes it into a product, or even that they hear back that it didn't because of this, this, and this, that's a huge benefit. I mean, even just reaching back to my days of building a help desk in the early 90s at HP, I was surprised to learn how much somebody appreciated the fact that when they left me messages in email from the questions I asked, or I offered them to ask questions out of a newsletter I was sending out, the fact that I actually responded with what we were doing and why we were or why we weren't was like an epiphany to them. And I thought that was just part of the job. The opportunity to do that with customers at an extended level is an enormous opportunity for any business. And then any tools that help ensure that a customer complaint, a process difficulty, or idea is responded to effectively in a timely manner should be considered a priority, right? I mean, the worst thing you can do with a customer is leave them in a black hole. It doesn't matter how hard you might be working behind the scenes. If the customer thinks they've been forgotten, you've lost, right? So back to my reference of even about the help desk again, as an analogy here. Somebody calls the help desk and they get Mark on the phone. Mark says, okay, thanks, I got your problem. I'll call you back when I fix it or when I have an update. And you're thinking maybe this will get fixed in 15 or 20 minutes, and 4 hours goes by. And Mark has torn his shirt, he's bit his lip, he's scratched his fingers on the server case, he's been working through lunch, it's whatever he thinks, he literally thinks, I've been that Mark, so that's why I'm using myself. He literally thinks he's saving the world and sacrificing himself to do it. And the customer thinks, what the hell? They forgot me. It's been like 4 hours and nobody's told me what's going on. So in a relatively big nutshell, those are areas that I think are just clear and obvious places to innovate, and using your vision for business transformation and or your activities for exploiting the edge to help enable those capabilities, I think have to be some kind of minimum viable product opportunities for everyone.
That makes sense. Really just focusing then on the customer experience or the customer support experience, or just making that customer feel valued, almost making the company more of a fan of their customers. Glenn, I want to ask you kind of a sort of an interesting alternate spin to that, where you've done a lot of work with over-the-top entities. What are some of the media innovation vectors and technology trends you're seeing emerge? Right, you're seeing streaming services explode all over the place. Every content owner turns into a streaming platform owner these days, it seems. How are they advancing some of their business logic to make more customers fans of their platform? Well, what are some of those OTT media trends that you're seeing around that business innovation?
Yeah, I kind of look at it in two categories, in enhancing the current OTT streaming type of experience, and then some emerging use cases, mostly around mixed reality. So on the sort of current streaming use cases, really to engage fans more and to engage advertisers as well in ad-supporting video, you get very quickly into personalization, targeted ad insertion, recommendations, and particularly recommendations that can be deeply integrated into the content discovery experience,
right.
Localization for like real-time translations and captioning. And many of these things are latency dependent and will run best out on the edge. So I see lots of opportunities there. I see opportunities around security and anti-piracy, this idea of watermarking video so it can't be pirated, but watermarking per session. So you're not just watermarking a copy of the video, but you're watermarking the fact that Glenn was looking at this video from this device on this time. Edge compute capabilities can make that sort of thing possible. And then in the emerging mixed reality world, look, we're going to see more and more mixed reality, augmented reality glasses out there. I think, the Google Glass was an early taste of it, and, people like to laugh at it. But, I think Magic Leap took it a little bit more seriously. Apple will be coming out with things that effectively look like the glasses I have here. And in fact, I'm in an augmented reality background right now. That is not a bookshelf behind me. That's a white wall. But you'll start to see cases where these glasses come out and they've got great high throughput, low latency connections with 5G, but they may be very limited in rendering power, because of battery and space concerns. That's a perfect use case for edge compute. And I think you'll see this idea of what they call cloud rendering or split rendering, where the glasses send up a vision of the environment I'm in, the camera frames up to the edge composites in augmented information or entertainment or objects or what have you, and then streams that back to my glasses. So I think particularly as we see vendors like Apple get into the mixed reality glasses market, that will open up a whole new area and touch on some of the use cases Mark mentioned around getting you as close as possible to your customers and interacting with them.
Right. That's fascinating. Dave, Cooper, shifting over to you, I just want to riff off something that Glenn had mentioned earlier, right, where he talked about fog computing and how some of those distributed applications are sort of coming from the breaking apart of what used to be sort of a linear process, using my eyes to look through glasses at what I can sense and starting to break that up into different ways of either rendering or mixed computing. What are some of those other services and applications? How are you thinking about innovating within the network for those types of applications? And is it fair to say that general purpose computing hardware is becoming more a standard piece of the network?
Yeah, Dave, I think you're right. I think for CenturyLink, for ourselves, general compute has been part of designing our network infrastructure for many, many years. Our content delivery network is an integral part of delivering all of our services across our backbone networks. And, we have to fully integrate the network design, the capacity planning, and all aspects of both caching, compute, as well as external customer traffic loads as well. It's gotten to the point where you really can't say which is more important to the overall design, whether it's the compute element, the traffic contributing from the compute, or the external interconnections that constitute the network. It's become also critical that there's a very, very important feedback loop between the compute elements, the CDN elements, and what will become the edge compute elements as well, and how we're building the network infrastructure so that we don't create any unneeded constraints.
Are there other learnings you can think of, like where, to what Glenn was mentioning before around, the embeddedness of some of those distributed media innovations? Are there learnings you would take from building and operating both a large network and a CDN together?
Yeah, I think, in general, there's a lot of things you learn about, when it comes to especially applications on compute that have significant performance and latency expectations, and content delivery is absolutely one of them. And you learn how to feed that into how you're building your infrastructure and how you're getting closer and closer, the proximity to the consumer, to the enterprise, and what have you. So we've used quite a bit of that in our own designs and architecture of building our infrastructure, and it's actually feeding right into how CenturyLink is looking at deploying its own edge compute network.
Yeah. So a lot of different business models being innovated. Mark talking about customer service business model innovations. Glenn talking about some of the over-the-top and the media and the interactivity business models. Mark, I wanted to pull you back in to talk really, speaking of some of those new business models. You're doing some new work down at that physical layer with a company called Edgevana that's looking at new ways of how those data center resources can be acquired. Can you talk a little bit about what those innovations mean for customers?
Yeah, I mean, Edgevana was really started because I felt that the edge opportunity was too big to be missed by anyone who had a desire to get out there. And there was a significant amount of available resource that is already at the edge, right? I mean, we could talk about an edge data center being at the bottom of a cell tower. We could talk about it being in a central office. But an edge data center is some physical facility that can handle infrastructure, networking, and power, et cetera, that's within the appropriate latency distance of a set of customers. Because not every edge solution requires 5 milliseconds, not every edge solution requires 20 or less milliseconds, but those are, even at 20, even at 30 milliseconds, those are still edge solutions as compared to getting access to something in the average public cloud, which for the average American across North America can be anywhere from 80 to 160 milliseconds round trip. And when you throw in security authorization in front of that, et cetera, or apps not designed well for that kind of traffic, the latency looks more like 300 or 400 milliseconds. So solving for that is an opportunity using basically the world's data centers as edge, right? How can we make the consumption of these data centers that are in all the markets, not in the markets that make the most sense for Wall Street, not in the markets that make the most sense for trading, but or finance in general, but those markets where everybody lives. And there are roughly 8,000 colocation facilities around the world. What I want to do is I want to be able to provide my customers the ability to contract with any or all of them as if they're buying from one, and to be able to layer services from great partners on there for improving network access, for creating SD-WAN connections between facilities, but effectively being able to consume global infrastructure as if it's part of a single network, more cost effectively and with greater time to value. And anybody that's ever done a project, ever thought about the finances of a project, has to realize that if you've decided you want to do a project, the minute you've decided, you've made an assumption that there is money to make or money to lose by not doing the project or by doing the project. And so if you can speed the time to value for the project, you have made more or lost less or done both. And so what I want to do is I want to take the months and sometimes years and huge amount of additional, I've literally talked to some of the most advanced companies in the world about their data center procurement processes. And they've told me point blank, oh no, we take care of that by having about 10 people work on contracts 2 years in advance for data centers all around the world. How is that efficient?
Right.
Right. And if you're just an average enterprise, not a technology-based company to begin with, that's not a way to spend your resources, right? So yep. I want to turn this into effectively a shopping list as much as possible, and help drive down cost of acquisition, and frankly drive down cost of service delivery by making customer acquisition more efficient and effective for those data centers in that network.
Makes sense. So a lot of different business model innovation we've talked about today, and so much so that we're unfortunately out of time. So what we wanted to do there is maybe we'll cut it off there. I know everyone's been waiting with bated breath, so I'm going to pull our producer Kim in. Kim, if you're on the line, to go let everybody know and congratulate who is the winner of the mug, the smart mug.
Thanks, David. Can you hear me?
We can.
Yep.
Great. Oh man, this has been a great discussion. I feel bad interrupting just to give away mugs, but here we go. Thanks everyone for sticking on. Smart mug, exactly. Tech forward. So thanks everyone for staying on until the end. So we are giving away 3 Ember brand smart mugs. So I know we're in the dregs of summer and it's very hot, but soon enough, I'm sure you'll all be enjoying hot tea or coffee. So without further ado, our 3 winners are Alan Wolt. So that's Alan, W-O-L-D-T. Second winner is Chris Swan. And the third, last but not least, winner is David McGarva. So thanks again for staying on till the end, and I will follow up with each of you individually to accommodate the shipment of your mug. Thanks so much. Back to you, Dave.
Thank you, Kim. Well, that's all the time we have. We hope you've enjoyed the discussion and today's webcast. If you'd like to review it again or refer it to a friend, it'll be available on demand within the next 24 hours, and then it'll be available from that point forward. If you'd like to download some of the great reference materials, just head on over to the related resources widget down below in the viewing console. Thanks to our sponsor, CenturyLink. Thanks again to our speakers, Mark, David, and Glenn. And we hope this inspires some strategic thinking in your organizations, and happy innovating.
Thanks, folks.
Thank you.